At my graduation party, they asked me to wait outside the hall. My aunt gave me a fake smile and said, "It's just for immediate family." I glanced around. Everyone else was already inside. So I picked up my cap and gown, turned my back, and said, "Looks like I'll find somewhere else to celebrate." As I walked off, my dad suddenly rushed out, completely panicked. That's when everything shifted. The moment I saw my Aunt Patricia's thin smile, blocking the entrance to my own graduation party, my heart didn't just sink, it shattered. For grueling years of medical school, all the sacrifices my mom made, and here I was, the graduate, standing outside, completely invisible. "The party is just for close family right now, Hannah," she'd said, and I instantly knew this wasn't just about a party, it was about a lifetime of feeling like I wasn't enough for my own family. Growing up, my mom, Janet Williams, was my everything. After my dad left when I was 3, she worked herself to the bone 3 jobs, morning to night, just to keep a roof over our heads. But no matter how tired she was, she always found time for me, helping with homework, cheering me on at school events. "Education is the one thing no one can ever take from you, Hannah," she'd say, her eyes heavy but her smile unwavering. "Your brain is your ticket to freedom." Our tiny, 2-bedroom apartment might have been in a less than ideal neighborhood, but it was our fortress. While other kids got new clothes and fancy toys, my treasures were trips to the public library. Mom made sure I never felt poor, even turning electricity shutoffs into flashlight adventures. But then there was extended family, a completely different story. My mom's sister, Aunt Patricia, married into money, and she never let us forget it. Their Christmas cards were perfect portraits from exotic vacations. When they hosted family gatherings, we were sometimes invited, but always felt like outsiders. My cousins, Emma, Jake, and Tyler, had everything I didn't: private schools, summer camps, parents at every game and recital. Why doesn't Aunt Patricia like us? I once asked my mom after a particularly uncomfortable Thanksgiving where my aunt commented on my thrift store dress. Mom just squeezed my hand. "Some people measure worth by what you have, not who you are. That's their loss." Despite the strained family dynamics, school became my refuge. It was a place where effort equaled results. By high school, I was taking all AP classes, working part-time at a local pharmacy. Dr. Santiago, the pharmacist, saw something in me. "You have a natural talent for remembering medication interactions," he told me, "and more importantly, you care about the people behind the prescriptions. That's what makes a good doctor." The dream of becoming a physician seemed impossible with our financial situation, but my mother wouldn't hear of limitations. She helped me research scholarships, attended college fairs, and spent hours perfecting my application essays. When acceptance letters arrived, including a partial scholarship from State University, we danced in our tiny kitchen. "You're going to be Dr. Williams someday," Mom said, tears in her eyes. I always knew it. College was a constant balancing act of academics, work-study jobs, and student loans. I lived off campus, ate ramen, and functioned on minimal sleep, but I thrived academically, making the dean's list every semester and securing research positions. Then, in my senior year, everything changed. Mom's persistent cough and fatigue weren't just from overwork. It was stage 4 lung cancer. Suddenly, I was splitting time between classes and the oncology ward, taking notes during chemotherapy sessions the way Mom had once reviewed my homework. "Don't you dare pause your applications," she insisted from her hospital bed. "My daughter is going to be a doctor." I was accepted to medical school with a scholarship, but Mom's condition deteriorated rapidly. 6 months after her diagnosis, I held her hand as she took her final breath. The woman who had given everything for my success wouldn't see me achieve it. Grief nearly derailed me. I considered deferring, but Mom's voice in my head wouldn't allow it. Instead, I channeled my pain into purpose, approaching medical school with an obsession. My mother's insurance policy covered her funeral and left just enough for a small down payment on a studio apartment near campus. The next 4 years were a blur. Anatomy labs, clinical rotations, board exams, and barely suppressed grief. My extended family largely disappeared. Aunt Patricia sent a generic sympathy card with a $50 check that bounced. My cousins occasionally texted on holidays, but our connection atrophied. I made a few close friends in my program, especially my study partner, Megan, who became the sister I never had. Mostly, I poured myself into becoming the doctor my mother had envisioned. In my final year, I was awarded the Preston Memorial Scholarship for emerging physicians dedicated to underserved communities, covering my remaining tuition and a stipend. When graduation approached, I sent announcements to my extended family more out of obligation than expectation. To my surprise, Aunt Patricia called. "We're so proud of you, Hannah," she said, her voice dripping with an enthusiasm I'd never heard directed at me. "The family wants to throw you a proper graduation party. You're the doctor in the family." I was suspicious, but hopeful. Maybe, just maybe, my achievement had finally earned their respect. "That sounds wonderful," I replied cautiously. "Leave everything to me," Patricia assured me. "Just focus on your graduation ceremony. This will be a celebration worthy of Dr. Williams." For the first time in years, I allowed myself to feel excited about family. Maybe this was a turning point, a chance to heal old wounds. I even splurged on a new dress. The actual graduation ceremony that day had been bittersweet. Sitting among my peers, I felt Mom's absence like a physical pain. When Hannah Janet Williams was called, I walked across the stage, scanning the audience out of habit, though I knew no family was there. Patricia had said they'd meet me at the restaurant. Your mom would be so proud, my advisor said, hugging me tightly. I know, I replied, believing it with all my heart. She's the reason I'm here. Little did I know, the true test of my strength wouldn't be medical school without my mother, but facing my family's continued rejection on one of the happiest days of my life. The day of graduation dawned with perfect early summer weather. After 4 years of grueling studies, sleepless nights, and moments of doubt, I had made it. Dr. Hannah Williams. The thought still felt surreal. I spent extra time getting ready, knowing this was a day my mother had dreamed about. My dress was a splurge, a knee-length navy blue number with subtle lace detailing I'd saved for weeks to afford. Mom would love this, I whispered to my reflection, touching the small pendant containing her photo that I wore around my neck. Throughout the graduation proceedings, I kept thinking about the party afterward. Aunt Patricia had texted me specific details, reservations at the Garland at 7 p.m. We have the private room in the back. Everyone's so excited to celebrate you. The Garland was one of the most upscale restaurants in town. The fact that my aunt had chosen such a venue seemed like a genuine effort to make this special. Despite our history, I felt a glimmer of hope. After the ceremony, I received congratulatory texts from several cousins. Can't wait to see you tonight, from Jake. So proud of you, sis. See you at the Garland, from Emma. Doctor in the family. Save me some cake, from Tyler. Each message fed my growing optimism. Maybe things really would be different now. I stopped home briefly to freshen up, keeping my graduation gown and cap for the party. The drive to the Garland took 15 minutes, and I rehearsed gracious responses. The restaurant was even more impressive than I'd imagined, a converted historic mansion with a grand entrance and elegant landscaping. I spotted several family members' cars. As I approached the entrance, diploma case tucked under my arm, I could hear music and laughter from inside. The hostess smiled. Welcome to the Garland. Do you have a reservation? I'm here for the Williams party, I explained. I believe they have the private room. Her expression brightened. Oh yes, they're all set up in the back. It looks wonderful. Let me get someone to show you. Hannah, there you are. I turned to see Aunt Patricia approaching, impeccably dressed in an expensive silk pantsuit. Her salon-perfect hair didn't move an inch. Something about her expression made my stomach tighten instinctively. I'll take it from here, she told the hostess, before turning to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Hannah dear, you look nice. The slight pause before nice wasn't lost on me, but I pushed aside the familiar feeling of being judged. Thank you for organizing this, Aunt Patricia. The restaurant is beautiful. She glanced around as though making sure no one could overhear us. About that, we're just getting everything situated inside. Would you mind waiting out here for a few minutes, just until we're ready? I blinked in confusion. Ready? But I thought, it's just for close family right now, she said firmly, smoothing an invisible wrinkle from her sleeve. We have some things to discuss before the actual celebration. Close family. I repeated, the words not making sense. But I am family. And isn't this party supposed to be for me? Aunt Patricia's expression tightened. Of course it is, Hannah. Don't be dramatic. We just need a few minutes to finalize some things. You understand. As we stood in the entryway, I could see past her into the private room. Through the partially open door, I glimpsed tables beautifully decorated with flowers and balloons. A banner reading "Congratulations, Dr. Williams" hung on the far wall. The room was full of people, not just immediate family, but distant relatives I barely recognized, and family friends I hadn't seen in years. Everyone was inside. Everyone except me. A couple entered the restaurant behind me, glancing curiously at my cap and gown. The woman smiled. Congratulations on your graduation. Thank you, I managed, my voice sounding far away. Aunt Patricia looked annoyed by the interruption. Just wait here. Someone will come get you when we're ready. She turned and walked back toward the private room without waiting for my response. Through the door, I caught a glimpse of my cousins, my uncle, and at least 20 other people, all chatting and holding champagne flutes. No one appeared to be getting things ready. They were already in full celebration mode. I stood frozen, clutching my diploma case so tightly my knuckles turned white. The reality slowly sank in. This was my graduation party, yet I was the only one not allowed inside. The hostess gave me a sympathetic look, busying herself with menus, clearly uncomfortable. My chest tightened as embarrassment washed over me. Memories from childhood flooded back, being seated at the kids' table long after my cousins graduated to the adult table, receiving obviously regifted presents while my cousins unwrapped the latest gaming systems, being introduced as Janet's daughter, rather than by my name. I had thought earning my medical degree would finally make me worthy in their eyes. Standing here, cap and gown on, diploma in hand, I realized nothing had changed. I was still the outsider, still not quite good enough for the close family. The same feeling of inadequacy that had haunted me throughout childhood crept up my spine. Was there something fundamentally unlovable about me? Logically, I knew this was their issue, not mine. But logic does little to soothe the pain of rejection, especially from people who are supposed to love you unconditionally. I found myself backing toward the door, nearly bumping into another arriving guest. My hands trembled, and my face burned with humiliation. Part of me wanted to push past Aunt Patricia, march into that room, and demand the recognition I'd earned. But another part, the little girl who had learned early to expect disappointment from everyone except her mother, just wanted to disappear. "Is everything okay, miss?" the hostess asked, concern in her voice. I couldn't answer. My throat had closed up, and I felt dangerously close to tears. The celebration sounds from the private room seemed to grow louder, mocking me. Someone laughed, a carefree sound that pierced me like physical pain. For a moment, I stood suspended between fight and flight, uncertain which instinct would win. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Megan. "How's the family party going? Sending you strength." Megan, who had seen me through panic attacks before exams. Megan, who had held me when I cried on the anniversaries of my mother's death. Megan, who was more family to me than anyone in that private room. That text was the lifeline I needed to pull myself back from the edge of public breakdown. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and made a decision. I would not beg for a place at my own celebration. 20 minutes passed as I stood awkwardly in the restaurant's lobby, each minute stretching painfully, marked by curious glances from arriving diners and increasingly sympathetic looks from the hostess. I kept checking my phone, half hoping for a text saying I could come in, half considering calling an Uber to escape this humiliation. "Are you waiting for your party, honey?" an elderly woman asked as she and her husband were leaving. "Do you need help finding them?" I forced a smile. "No, thank you. They know I'm here." That was the worst part. They knew exactly where I was. Just outside the door, excluded from my own graduation celebration. I texted Megan, "You won't believe this." Standing outside my own party. Patricia said it's just for close family right now. Her response was immediate. WTF. "That's your party. Want me to come down there?" "Not yet. Just needed to vent." I scrolled through old photos on my phone to distract myself, landing on one from my 12th birthday. Mom had saved for months to throw me a small party at the local skating rink. She had invited my entire class plus extended family. Only 2 classmates showed up. No family came at all. Later, we learned Aunt Patricia had hosted a pool party for Emma that same day, despite Mom specifically mentioning my birthday. When confronted, Aunt Patricia had simply said, "Well, Emma's friends were already counting on this date." I'm sure Hannah understands. I hadn't understood. Not really. Mom had tried to make it special anyway, skating with me and my 2 friends, buying an ice cream cake and taking silly photo booth pictures that I still treasured. But I remembered crying that night, asking Mom what was wrong with me that made my own family not want to celebrate me. Another memory surfaced, my high school graduation. Mom had been so proud, cheering loudly when my name was called. We had planned a small dinner afterward, inviting Aunt Patricia's family and a few other relatives. Only Uncle Robert had shown up, bringing a card signed by everyone else, claiming various last-minute conflicts. Later that week, social media revealed the truth. They had all attended a baseball game together instead. My thoughts were interrupted by the restaurant door opening. My cousin Jake stepped out, looking uncomfortable. "Hey," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Sorry about the wait." I crossed my arms. "What's going on, Jake? Why am I standing out here while everyone else is inside?" He shifted his weight, looking exactly like he had when we were kids, and he was lying about who broke Grandma's vase. "Aunt Patricia is just organizing a surprise. You know how she is about having everything perfect." "A surprise? At my graduation party that I'm not allowed to attend?" Jake winced. "It's not like that. She just wants to make an announcement before you come in. It'll just be a few more minutes." Through the door behind him, I could see people eating appetizers and drinking champagne. Someone was taking group photos. This didn't look like preparation for a surprise. It looked like a party in full swing. "Jake, be honest with me. What's really happening?" He finally looked at me, guilt written across his features. "Look, I don't agree with it, okay? I told Mom this was messed up, but you know how she gets." "How she gets about what?" He lowered his voice. "She's making this big speech about how proud the family is to have a doctor now, and how we've all supported you through medical school. Some people from Dad's firm are here, important clients. She's kind of making it seem like they paid for your education." The audacity was breathtaking. "They didn't give me a dime, Jake. Your mom sent me a sympathy card when my mother died with a check that bounced. None of you even came to my white coat ceremony." Jake had the decency to look ashamed. "I know. I should have been there. It's just, you know how it is. I didn't know. I had always been the family obligation, not a true member of their circle. The poor relation they occasionally remembered out of duty, not love." "I'm sorry, Hannah." "I really am proud of you," Jake said, sounding sincere for the first time. "I should get back inside before Mom notices I'm gone." As he retreated, I felt the hurt transform into something hotter and sharper, anger. How dare they use my accomplishment as social currency while excluding me? How dare Aunt Patricia pretend she had anything to do with my success? I thought about my mother, who had worked herself to exhaustion to give me opportunities, who had helped me study for the MCAT while undergoing chemotherapy, who had made me promise on her deathbed to finish what we started. "Don't let anything stop you," she had whispered, her hand frail in mine. "And don't let anyone make you feel small. You're meant for big things, Hannah." Standing outside that restaurant, in my cap and gown, I felt her absence like a physical ache. She would have stormed into that room and demanded respect for her daughter. But Mom wasn't here. It was just me. And I had a choice to make. My phone buzzed again with a text from Megan. "What's the address?" "I'm coming." In that moment, I realized something important. Family wasn't defined by blood. It was defined by who showed up for you, who celebrated your victories and helped you through defeats. By that definition, Aunt Patricia and most of the people in that room weren't my family at all. I looked through the glass door at the celebration happening without me. Through the window, I could see Aunt Patricia at the center of attention, gesturing dramatically as she spoke to a group of well-dressed strangers. This wasn't about me. It had never been about me. It was about Aunt Patricia's desire to associate herself with my achievement without having to acknowledge her failure to support me when it actually mattered. It was about appearance, not reality. About the story she wanted to tell, not the truth of what had happened. The realization didn't lessen the hurt, but it clarified something for me. I was done waiting for approval from people who had no intention of ever truly giving it. I was done making myself small to fit into spaces where I wasn't genuinely wanted. I was my mother's daughter, and it was time I stood up for myself the way she always had for me. After nearly 40 minutes of standing in the lobby, I had become part of the restaurant's decor. The hostess had stopped asking if I needed anything, and new arrivals no longer gave me curious glances. I was just the woman in graduation regalia, eternally waiting. Through the partially open door to the private room, I could see the celebration continuing without me. A waiter passed by, carrying a tray of elegant desserts, little chocolate things topped with what looked like edible gold. Mom would have found that ridiculous. "Food you wear, not eat," she would have joked. I shifted position to get a better view and froze when I saw Aunt Patricia standing at the head of the main table, champagne glass raised. The room quieted as she began to speak, her voice carrying clearly to where I stood. "As I was saying, our family has always valued education above all else," she proclaimed. "When my dear sister Janet passed, Robert and I promised we would ensure Hannah completed her journey to becoming a doctor. It wasn't easy, but family takes care of family." The blatant lie knocked the air from my lungs. Not only had they provided no support, but Aunt Patricia had actively discouraged me from wasting money on more school after Mom died, suggesting I should get a real job. And now she continued, "And now, we're so proud to celebrate Dr. Hannah Williams, the physician in our family. Though she's running fashionably late today," light laughter rippled through the room. "We couldn't be prouder of her accomplishment and our part in it." I must have made some sound because the hostess glanced over with concern. Inside the room, someone had placed a large portrait of me in my white coat on an easel. It was my official medical school photo. Next to it was a smaller framed photo of my mother, the same one I kept on my nightstand. The sight of Mom's image being used in the charade was the final straw. As I watched, a waiter approached my aunt and whispered something. Her eyes darted toward the door, toward me, and her expression tightened. She nodded and continued her speech as if nothing had happened. Moments later, the waiter slipped out to the lobby and approached me cautiously. "Excuse me, Miss Williams, I believe you're the guest of honor." I nodded, beyond words. "Your aunt asked me to check if you were still waiting." He seemed uncomfortable. "She said to tell you they're almost ready for you." "Almost ready? After 45 minutes at my own graduation party? How many people are in there?" I asked. He glanced back at the room. "About 50, I think." It's quite a turnout. 50 people celebrating an achievement they had nothing to do with, while the actual graduate stood outside like an unwanted delivery. I thought about my options. I could continue waiting, eventually be allowed in, and pretend none of this had happened. I could make a scene, barge in, and call out Aunt Patricia's lies. I could leave quietly and let them continue their farce without me. What would serve my dignity best? What would honor my mother's memory and the values she had instilled in me? Mom had always emphasized taking the high road, but she had also taught me that self-respect was non-negotiable. Never beg for a seat at a table where you're not valued, she had told me once. Build your own table instead. As I stood there deliberating, I saw through the door as a waiter brought out a large cake decorated with "Congratulations, Dr. Williams" in elegant script. Aunt Patricia was positioning herself next to it, clearly planning to be in all the photos. My cousin Emma was adjusting the "Congratulations, Graduate" banner, making sure it would be visible in pictures. They were creating a narrative that erased my struggle, my mother's sacrifice, and their own absence during the hardest years of my life. They were rewriting history to cast themselves as the supportive, generous family they had never actually been. The realization hit me with stunning clarity. Nothing I could say or do would change who they fundamentally were. No achievement of mine would ever be enough to make them truly accept me. I could become Surgeon General, and Aunt Patricia would still find a way to make me wait outside my own celebration while she took credit for my success. I looked down at my graduation gown, the academic regalia I had worked so hard to earn the right to wear, the blue and gold colors of my university, the honor cords signifying graduating with distinction. This was mine, my accomplishment, my moment. And I refused to let it be hijacked by people who didn't deserve to share in it. With sudden resolve, I began unfastening the gown. I slipped it off, followed by the cap, and carefully folded them over my arm, along with my diploma case. The hostess watched curiously as I squared my shoulders and took a deep breath. I walked to the door of the private room and pushed it open just enough to catch Aunt Patricia's eye. The conversation nearest the door faltered as people noticed me. My aunt's smile flickered for just a moment before she recovered. "There she is," she exclaimed, though not quite loud enough to interrupt the conversations happening farther back. "We're almost ready for your grand entrance, dear." I met her gaze steadily. "No need, Aunt Patricia. I can see you're all having a wonderful time celebrating something. But since this is clearly not actually about me, I'll leave you to it." Her smile hardened. "Don't be ridiculous, Hannah. Of course, this is about you. We're all here to celebrate you." "Really?" "Because I've been standing outside for nearly an hour while you told everyone how you supported me through medical school, which is interesting since I haven't seen you since Mom's funeral 4 years ago." A few nearby conversations stopped as people tuned into our exchange. Aunt Patricia's eyes darted around nervously. "This isn't the time or place for dramatics," she hissed. "We can discuss any misunderstandings later." I shook my head. "There's no misunderstanding. You wanted the social capital of having a doctor in the family without having to actually support me becoming one. You wanted the party without the person." Message received loud and clear. I held up my folded gown and cap. "I'll take these and my actual achievements elsewhere. Guess I'll celebrate with people who were actually there for me during the journey." The shocked silence that followed was deeply satisfying. For once, Aunt Patricia seemed at a loss for words. My cousin Jake half rose from his seat, looking conflicted, while Emma and Tyler stared open-mouthed. "Hannah, wait." Uncle Robert started, but I was already turning away. As I walked out of the restaurant, I felt a curious mixture of emotions. Hurt and anger, yes, but also a surprising lightness. For the first time in my life, I had stood up to the family dynamics that had made me feel inadequate for as long as I could remember. I had refused to accept scraps of attention when I deserved a full place at the table. Outside, in the warm evening air, I took a deep breath and texted Megan, "I'm leaving. Can I come over?" Her response was immediate, "Already setting up. Bring ice." I smiled through the tears that had finally escaped. My chosen family might be smaller, but it was real, and that was worth celebrating. I made it exactly 3 blocks from the Garland before pulling into a gas station parking lot, unable to see through my tears. The full weight of what had just happened crashed over me like a wave. I sat behind the wheel, clutching my carefully folded graduation gown, and sobbed deep, body-shaking sobs that came from a place of accumulated grief. I cried for my mother, who should have been there, for the family support I had never received, and for the little girl inside me who still craved validation from people who would never give it. When the initial storm passed, I called Megan, my voice still thick with emotion. "They're throwing a party for me that I'm not allowed to attend," I explained, the absurdity of it hitting me anew. "Patricia is literally taking credit for putting me through medical school. Those absolute trash humans." Megan fumed. "I knew your aunt was bad, but this is another level." I wiped my eyes, smudging my carefully applied makeup. "I don't know why I'm even surprised. This is just more of the same, isn't it? They've always treated me like this. Which is why you're better off without them. Come over now." I've already texted the group. "What group?" "The Real Celebration Committee," she said with determination. "Just get your butt over here with ice." By the time I arrived at Megan's apartment 20 minutes later, my phone was buzzing constantly with notifications, multiple text messages from Jake. That was messed up. "I'm sorry. Mom is trying to spin it like you had a meltdown. Are you okay? Where are you?" And surprisingly, one from Uncle Robert. "Your mother would be ashamed of how you were treated today. I should have spoken up sooner. This isn't right." I silenced my phone and focused on climbing the stairs to Megan's third-floor apartment, ice bag in one hand, graduation regalia and diploma in the other. When she opened the door, I was greeted by the sound of celebratory music and the sight of hastily hung decorations. A handwritten "Congrats, Dr. Hannah" banner stretched across her living room and blue and gold balloons taped to the walls. But more surprising were the people gathered there. Dr. Santiago from the pharmacy where I had worked in high school, my study group from medical school, 2 favorite professors, and several friends from my clinical rotations. At least 15 people, all smiling and cheering as I entered. "Surprise," Megan said, hugging me tightly. "The real celebration, with people who actually give a damn about you." I stood frozen in the doorway, overwhelmed by this spontaneous outpouring of support. "How did you?" Group text. Everyone dropped what they were doing. "That's what real family does," Dr. Santiago approached, gray hair now where there had once been black, but his kind eyes unchanged. "I wouldn't have missed celebrating this milestone with you, Hannah. I still remember the teenager who asked me 1,000 questions about drug interactions. I knew then you'd make an exceptional doctor." My anatomy professor, Dr. Chin, raised a glass. To Dr. Williams, one of the most dedicated students I've had the pleasure of teaching. Your mother would be bursting with pride. The genuine warmth in that room was like stepping into sunshine. After years in shadow, these people had actually been part of my journey, had witnessed my struggles and successes, had offered help when I needed it, had celebrated my incremental victories along the way. As we crowded into Megan's small apartment, sharing impromptu toasts and stories, my phone continued to buzz. I finally checked it to find social media notifications. My cousins and other family members had begun posting congratulatory messages publicly, so proud of my brilliant cousin, Dr. Hannah Williams. #family pride, #doctor in the family, from Emma, who had barely spoken 10 words to me in the past 4 years. Major respect for my cousin completing medical school despite incredible challenges. #inspiration, from Tyler, who had never once checked on me after mom died. The duplicity was staggering. They were crafting a public narrative of family support while the reality couldn't have been more different. I showed Megan, who rolled her eyes dramatically. Classic. They're damage controlling. Bet Aunt Patricia is making them post that stuff. Before I could respond, my phone rang with an unknown number. I almost declined it, but something made me answer. Is this Hannah Williams? A woman's voice asked. Yes, this is she. This is Marjorie, the events manager at the Garland. I wanted to personally apologize for what happened this evening. Your situation was brought to my attention by several of our staff who were very concerned. I stepped into Megan's bedroom for privacy. Oh, thank you, but it wasn't the restaurant's fault. Nevertheless, what happened was unacceptable. I've worked here for 15 years, and I've never seen anything quite like it. She paused. I should tell you that shortly after you left, quite a scene developed. Several people walked out, including an older gentleman who I believe was your uncle. My heart skipped. Uncle Robert left? Yes, and he was quite vocal about his disapproval. 2 younger men followed him. They appeared to be around your age. Jake and Tyler. That was unexpected. The party broke up rather quickly after that. Marjorie continued. Your aunt tried to continue as if nothing had happened, but it was awkward, to say the least. A small, petty part of me was gratified to hear that my departure had disrupted their carefully orchestrated event. But mostly, I was shocked that Uncle Robert and my cousins had actually taken a stand. I appreciate you letting me know, I told her. There's one more thing, she added. The gentleman, your uncle, settled the bill in full, but left instructions that the cake was to be delivered to you. He left your address with us. Would tomorrow morning be acceptable? I gave her Megan's address instead, thanked her, and returned to the celebration in the living room with a strange feeling of vindication. At least some of my family had recognized the injustice. As the evening progressed, I received 3 more calls from Uncle Robert, which I let go to voicemail, not ready to talk. But I did listen to his messages. Hannah, it's Uncle Robert. What happened tonight was inexcusable. Patricia had no right to treat you that way, especially not on your graduation day. I should have put a stop to it immediately. Please call me back when you can. A few minutes later, it's me again. I've left the party. So have Jake and Tyler. We're at the diner on Main if you want to join us. No pressure, but the door is open. And then, an hour later, just checking if you're okay. I understand if you don't want to talk right now. Just know that I'm truly sorry, and I'd like to make it right if you'll give me the chance. I showed the messages to Megan, who had been my rock through every medical school crisis. What do you think? I asked her. Should I call him back? She considered it seriously. He's making an effort. That's more than can be said for the rest of them. Maybe hear him out, but set boundaries. You don't owe anyone automatic forgiveness. I nodded, feeling a new sense of empowerment. For too long, I had accepted whatever scraps of family connection were thrown my way. But standing up for myself at the restaurant had shifted something fundamental. I deserved better. And for the first time, I truly believed it. My phone chimed with a text from Jake. I messed up big time. Should have stood up for you right away. Left with Dad and Tyler. Can we talk tomorrow? The celebration around me continued genuine, warm, and supportive. These people had shown up for me when it counted. They were celebrating my achievement, not using it for their own social capital. This was what family was supposed to feel like. Dr. Santiago raised his glass again. I propose another toast, not just to Hannah's achievement, but to her character. Janet raised a daughter with integrity, persistence, and compassion. Those qualities will make you an exceptional physician. As everyone clinked glasses, my anatomy lab partner, Marcus, called out, speech from the doctor. Surrounded by people who actually cared about me, I found my voice. I couldn't have done this without all of you. Medical school is impossible to get through alone. And each of you helped me in ways you might not even realize. My voice caught. My mom used to say that family isn't just about blood. It's about who shows up. All of you showed up, not just today, but throughout this journey. I raised my glass, feeling a bittersweet mixture of grief and gratitude. To my mom, who started me on this path. And to all of you, my chosen family, who helped me finish it. As tears erupted, I felt my phone buzz again with another text. This one from an unexpected source. Hannah, your behavior tonight was embarrassing and childish. After all we've done for you, this is how you repay us? You've always had a flair for drama, just like your mother. I showed it to Megan, who gasped in outrage. But instead of the hurt I might have felt before, I found myself laughing. The message was so transparently manipulative, so clearly designed to make me question my own reality, that it had lost its power. "What are you going to do?" Megan asked. I deleted the message without responding and put my phone away. "I'm going to celebrate becoming a doctor with people who are actually happy for me. The rest can wait until tomorrow." For the first time in years, I felt truly free, not of grief for my mother, which would always be part of me, but of the desperate need for approval from people who would never freely give it. I had built my own table, just as Mom had advised, and it was filled with people who genuinely cared. That night, surrounded by genuine support and celebration, I finally understood that I hadn't lost family when my mother died. I had simply needed to recognize the family I already had. The morning after graduation dawned bright and clear, both outside and within me. I woke on Megan's couch to the smell of coffee and the gentle clattering of breakfast preparation. My head ached slightly from the champagne we'd consumed, but the emotional hangover I'd expected was surprisingly absent. In its place was a sense of clarity I hadn't experienced in years. "Morning, doctor," Megan said, handing me a steaming mug. "How's it feel to be both a doctor and an official family rebel?" I laughed, sitting up and gratefully accepting the coffee. "Surprisingly good, though I have about 20 missed calls to deal with." My phone had indeed been lighting up since dawn, messages from Uncle Robert, Jake, Tyler, and even Emma. Conspicuously, absent was any communication from Aunt Patricia beyond her passive-aggressive text from the night before. I scrolled through them while sipping my coffee, trying to decide my next move. "The cake's being delivered at 10 o'clock, I reminded Megan. "Yes, stolen graduation cake for breakfast. I'm here for this level of petty." Around 9:30, while we were still in pajamas discussing whether to respond to any of the messages, an unexpected knock came at the door. Megan peeked through the peephole and turned to me with wide eyes. "It's your Aunt Patricia," she whispered. "And she does not look happy." My stomach dropped. I hadn't given the Garland Megan's address. Only Uncle Robert had that information. He must have told his wife. "You don't have to see her," Megan said firmly. "I can tell her to leave." I considered this for a moment. Running away or hiding would only reinforce the dynamic that had existed all my life. Aunt Patricia as the authority figure, me as the chastened child. It was time to change that pattern. "No, I'll talk to her," I decided, standing up. "But here, on my terms." I quickly ran a brush through my hair and straightened my wrinkled clothes from the day before. Not ideal, but this wasn't about appearances anymore. When I opened the door, Aunt Patricia stood there in another impeccable outfit, her handbag clutched tightly against her body like armor. Her lips were pressed into a thin line, her entire posture radiating disapproval. "May I come in?" she asked stiffly. "You can say whatever you came to say from there," I replied, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. Her eyes narrowed at this defiance. "This isn't a conversation for hallways, Hannah. I raised you better than that. Actually, you didn't raise me at all. My mother did. And she taught me that respect is earned, not automatically granted based on family title." Aunt Patricia flinched almost imperceptibly. For a moment, I saw something flicker across her face, not anger, but something more complex. "Fine," she said after a pause. "I came to tell you that your behavior yesterday was unacceptable. Do you have any idea how much that party cost? How many important connections were there specifically to meet you? You embarrassed the entire family." I leaned against the door frame, considering her words. That's interesting, because from where I was standing outside my own party, it seemed like the event was more about you than me. You were taking credit for supporting me through medical school when we both know that's not true. "We are family," she insisted. "Your accomplishments reflect on all of us." "Family?" I repeated the word, bitter on my tongue. Where was this family when Mom was dying? Where was this family when I was working 3 jobs to make rent during my first year of medical school? Where were you, Aunt Patricia, when I needed actual support, not a performative party after I'd already succeeded? She adjusted her handbag, clearly uncomfortable. Your mother chose her path. She always had to do everything her own way. Even when we offered help, this blatant revision of history ignited something in me. What help? When Mom worked herself to exhaustion providing for me because her family, your family, decided she wasn't worth supporting when she became a single mother. You all judged her, excluded her, made her feel less than. And then you did the same to me. That's not true, she protested. But her voice lacked conviction. It is true. And you know what's sad? I spent years thinking if I just achieved enough, if I just became successful enough, you would finally accept me. But standing outside that restaurant yesterday, I realized it would never be enough. The problem was never me, it was you. Aunt Patricia's carefully maintained facade cracked slightly. You don't understand. Things were complicated with your mother and me. Then help me understand, I challenged. Because from my perspective, you've treated me like an unwanted obligation my entire life. She was silent for a long moment, staring past me into the apartment. When she finally spoke, her voice was quieter. Your mother was always the smart one, the pretty one, the one everyone adored. I was the practical one, the responsible one. I did everything right, married well, maintained the family connections, upheld our social standing. Janet threw it all away for your father, who everyone knew was unreliable. I stared at her, realization dawning. You were jealous of her. I was concerned. She corrected quickly, but we both heard the lie. When he left and she struggled, I thought she would finally admit she had made a mistake, that she needed our help, my help. But she never did. She was too proud. She was too hurt, I countered, by her family's judgment, by her conditional love. Aunt Patricia looked away. When she got sick, I didn't know how bad it was. She didn't tell me until it was advanced. By then it was too late to reconcile. I finished for her. And after she died, instead of making amends by supporting her daughter, you just continued the same pattern. Something that might have been shame crossed her face. I didn't know how to bridge that gap. And then you were achieving everything on your own, just like she would have done. Megan appeared at my shoulder, a silent show of support, and Patricia glanced between us, seeming to register for the first time that I wasn't alone or defenseless. The party was supposed to be a gesture, she said finally. A recognition. It was a performance, I corrected gently. For your friends and connections, not for me. If you had wanted to genuinely celebrate me, you wouldn't have made me wait outside like an unwelcome guest. Before she could respond, the elevator dinged, and a delivery person appeared with an enormous cake box. Delivery for Dr. Williams? The timing was almost comical. Aunt Patricia stared at the cake, then back at me. Robert arranged for this, I nodded. He, Jake, and Tyler left the party after I did. They seem to understand what you still don't. That family means showing up when it matters, not just when it's convenient or socially advantageous. She absorbed this information with visible discomfort. For perhaps the first time in our relationship, I saw Aunt Patricia at a loss for words. The carefully constructed narrative she had built of the generous aunt supporting her less fortunate niece was crumbling before her eyes. After the delivery person handed off the cake to Megan, an awkward silence fell between us. I waited, no longer feeling the need to fill this space or make things easier for her. I should go, she finally said. Clearly this isn't the right time. When would be the right time, Aunt Patricia? After years of exclusion and judgment, when exactly would be the appropriate moment to address it? She had no answer for that. As she turned to leave, I felt not the satisfaction I might have expected, but a strange kind of pity. My aunt had spent so many years maintaining appearances and hierarchies that she had missed the true meaning of family, the unconditional support and celebration of each other's joys that my mother had embodied. For what it's worth, I called after her. I would have welcomed a genuine relationship with you and the family. Not because of what you could give me materially, but because you were my mother's sister. That meant something to me. She paused, but didn't turn around. After a moment, she continued toward the elevator, her shoulders rigid with pride or regret. Perhaps both. Later that day, I finally returned Uncle Robert's calls. Our conversation was tentative, years of distance creating an awkwardness neither of us quite knew how to navigate. I failed you and your mother, he said bluntly after preliminary pleasantries. I let Patricia dictate our family relationships because it was easier than standing up to her. He paused. Yesterday, watching you stand alone outside your own celebration, it was like seeing your mother all over again. I couldn't be complicit anymore. What happened after I left? I asked. He chuckled, without humor. I told Patricia she had gone too far. Jake and Tyler agreed. We walked out, and about half the guests followed, including most of the actual family members. The business associates she was so eager to impress were left rather confused about the whole situation. This revelation surprised me. Half the guests left? Your cousin Emma stayed, he added, but she texted me later saying she regretted not leaving too. Patricia has a strong influence over her. We talked for nearly an hour, Uncle Robert filling in gaps in my understanding of the family dynamics that had shaped my childhood, my mother's decision to marry against family wishes, the subsequent ostracism when the marriage failed, the complicated relationship between the sisters that had begun in childhood and poisoned everything that came after. None of this excuses how you were treated, he emphasized. But I want you to know it was never about you, Hannah. It was old wounds and jealousies that existed long before you were born. That doesn't make it hurt any less, I said honestly. No, I suppose it doesn't. He paused. Jake and Tyler would like to see you if you're willing. They're genuinely sorry. They've always looked up to you. You know, your determination, your independence. Qualities their mother didn't necessarily encourage in them. I promised to think about it, not ready to commit to more family interactions just yet. When we ended the call, I felt a strange mixture of closure and new beginning. The conversation hadn't erased the hurt of years of exclusion, but it had provided context I had never had before. Over the next few weeks, as I prepared for the start of my residency, I received tentative outreach from various family members. Jake invited me to coffee, where he awkwardly but sincerely apologized for years of going along with his mother's treatment of me. Emma sent a handwritten card congratulating me on graduation and expressing regret for her role in the party debacle. Even Tyler, the cousin I'd had the least connection with, texted asking if we could reconnect. Aunt Patricia remained conspicuously silent, but Uncle Robert reported that my confrontation had shaken her more than she would admit. She's not good at acknowledging when she's wrong, he explained. Never has been. But she knows she crossed a line this time. I decided to accept these tentative olive branches from my cousins while maintaining healthy boundaries. We weren't going to become an instantly close-knit family after years of distance. But perhaps we could build something new, a relationship based on who we were as adults, rather than the dynamics established in childhood. More surprisingly, I found myself considering family therapy with those willing to participate. Not to excuse the past, but to understand it better and create healthier patterns moving forward. My medical training had taught me that sometimes the most painful wounds needed to be reopened and cleaned before they could properly heal. As I packed for my move to Boston, where I would begin my residency, I placed my mother's photo carefully between layers of clothing. "I did it, Mom," I whispered. "Not just becoming a doctor, but standing up for myself the way you always wanted me to." I didn't need a fancy party or family validation to know she would have been proud. 1 year after the graduation party incident, I stood in the small but cheerful backyard of my new apartment in Boston, surrounded by a mixture of old and new friends, colleagues from my residency program, and most surprisingly, a small contingent of family members. Uncle Robert manned the grill with unnecessary seriousness. Jake was deep in conversation with Megan about a patient case I'd consulted them both on. And Emma was helping arrange a table of potluck dishes that had been steadily accumulating. Year Residency Survivor Celebration read a handmade banner hanging between 2 trees, Megan's handiwork, complete with anatomically correct heart drawings that made some of the non-medical guests slightly uncomfortable. I surveyed the scene with a quiet sense of satisfaction. This gathering was everything last year's party wasn't: genuine, relaxed, and centered around actual relationships rather than appearances. No one was performing for social media or business connections. No one was taking credit for my accomplishments. It was simply people who cared about each other enjoying a beautiful summer day. The path to this moment had been neither straight nor easy. The months following my confrontation with Aunt Patricia had been filled with awkward family dynamics, tentative reconciliations, and occasional backsliding into old patterns. We had started family therapy, myself, Uncle Robert, Jake, and eventually Emma, meeting monthly with a skilled therapist who specialized in family systems. Our sessions had been almost comically tense, none of us quite knowing how to bridge years of distance and hurt. But slowly, session by session, we began to unpack the complex history that had shaped our relationships. Uncle Robert spoke candidly about his regret at not standing up to his wife sooner. Jake and Emma shared their own experiences growing up under Aunt Patricia's exacting standards and conditional approval, different from my exclusion, but damaging in its own way. "I always thought you had it better because you had freedom," Emma admitted during one session. "Mom was so controlling of every aspect of my life, my appearance, my friends, my activities. Everything was about maintaining the right image. And I thought you had it better because you had security and belonging," I countered. "I would have traded some freedom for knowing I had family support." These realizations helped us develop empathy for each other's experiences. We weren't comparing trauma or competing for who had it worse. We were finally seeing each other clearly, perhaps for the first time. Aunt Patricia refused to participate in therapy, maintaining that the whole exercise was unnecessary drama. Her absence was felt, but in some ways, it allowed the rest of us to speak more freely. Uncle Robert had begun standing up to her more consistently, refusing to enable behaviors that damaged family relationships. It had created tension in their marriage, but he seemed more at peace with himself. "Your mother would be proud of you," he told me one day after a particularly productive therapy session. Not just for becoming a doctor, but for forcing us all to face some hard truths. Professionally, my year of residency had been the expected whirlwind of exhaustion, intense learning, and occasional triumphs. The internal medicine program at Boston General was renowned for its rigorous standards, and there were days when I questioned whether I had the stamina to continue. But the resilience I had developed throughout my life served me well in the hospital's challenging environment. What surprised me most was how my personal experience with family dysfunction had unexpectedly become an asset in my medical practice. I found I had a particular sensitivity to patients whose illnesses were complicated by family dynamics: the elderly man whose children couldn't agree on his care plan, the teenager with mysterious symptoms exacerbated by parental conflict, the young mother trying to navigate treatment decisions without family support. "You have a gift for this," my attending physician commented after watching me mediate a difficult family meeting. "Most residents your level would have gotten frustrated and walked out." "I've had some practice," I replied simply. As the backyard celebration continued around me, I found myself drawn to the small memorial table I had set up in a quiet corner. My mother's photograph stood surrounded by a few meaningful items: her favorite book, the stethoscope she had given me when I was accepted to medical school, and a small jar containing sand from the beach where we had scattered her ashes. "Having a moment?" Megan asked, appearing at my side with 2 glasses of lemonade. I smiled, accepting the drink. "Just thinking about how much has changed in a year. From standing outside your own party to hosting one. That's what I call character development." We clinked glasses, watching as the gathering evolved around us. New connections were forming, my residency mentor deep in conversation with Dr. Santiago, who had driven up from my hometown for the weekend, Jake showing my colleague Priya pictures of his new puppy, Uncle Robert earnestly discussing grilling techniques with my landlord. "You've built something good here," Megan observed. Your own kind of family. The term, chosen family, had always felt somewhat cliché to me, but looking around, I couldn't deny its accuracy. These were the people who showed up, not because of obligation or social expectation, but because of genuine care and connection. Some were related by blood, others by shared experience, but all had earned their place in my life through consistent presence and support. Aunt Patricia's absence was noticeable, but not painful. After months of minimal contact, she had sent a brief note acknowledging that perhaps she had misjudged some situations, as close to an apology as she was likely to offer. I had responded with equal brevity, leaving the door open for future reconciliation without expecting it. Our relationship remained tentative and distant, but the toxic power she had once held over me was gone. Dr. Williams, one of my interns, called, waving me over to settle a good-natured debate about a recent medical journal article. As I joined the group, I caught Uncle Robert watching me with an expression that reminded me powerfully of my mother, a mixture of pride and wistfulness that made my heart contract. Later, as the evening wound down and guests began to depart, Uncle Robert helped me carry dishes into the kitchen. Your mother loved gatherings like this, he said unexpectedly. Nothing fancy, just good people enjoying each other's company. Patricia always thought Janet's parties were too casual, not impressive enough. But they were always the ones people actually enjoyed. I paused, hands deep in soapy water. I didn't know that about her. There's a lot you might not know. She was a remarkable woman, your mother. Stubborn as hell, of course, a family trait you've clearly inherited. He smiled wryly. She would be so proud of the life you're building, Hannah. Not just the doctor part, though that too. But the way you've learned to stand up for yourself while still keeping your heart open. That's no small thing. As the last guests departed and quiet settled over the apartment, I sat alone on my small balcony, watching the city lights against the darkening sky. The journey from that humiliating moment outside the Garland to this peaceful evening had taught me lessons no medical textbook could contain. I had learned that family was defined not by DNA, but by consistent presence and genuine support. That standing up for yourself wasn't selfish, but necessary for authenticity. That healing often required confronting painful truths rather than maintaining comfortable illusions. And, perhaps most importantly, that belonging was not something to be earned through achievement or pleasing others, but something to be built through mutual respect and care. My phone buzzed with a text from Megan. Best party ever. Your mom would have loved it. I smiled, feeling my mother's presence not as an absence, but as a foundation, the strong base upon which I had built everything that followed. Her love had been unconditional in a family where love typically came with strings attached. That gift had ultimately allowed me to recognize when relationships were healthy and when they were not, to set boundaries where needed, and to build connections based on genuine care rather than obligation. The hard-won wisdom of the past year settled around me like a comfortable blanket. I had learned that walking away from toxic dynamics wasn't giving up. It was the first step toward creating something better. That confronting painful patterns wasn't causing trouble. It was creating possibility for healing. That standing alone was sometimes necessary before you could truly stand together. As I prepared for bed that night, I paused before my mother's photograph on my nightstand. I think I finally understand what you were trying to teach me all along, I whispered. That family isn't about who you're born to. It's about who you choose to become, and who chooses to stand beside you through that journey. The road ahead would still have its complications. Family dynamics established over generations don't transform overnight, and residency would continue to test my limits professionally. But I face these challenges now from a place of hard-won strength and clarity. I had stopped waiting for a seat at a table where I wasn't valued. Instead, I had built my own table, one large enough for all who wished to connect authentically, with no one left standing outside. What about you? Have you ever had to walk away from something familiar to find something better, or had to redefine family on your own terms? Share your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe to hear more journeys of healing and growth, and share with someone who might need to be reminded that they deserve to be celebrated exactly as they are. Thank you for being part of my chosen family today.